The second story that Fitzgerald had in the Post was called Myra Meets His Family, and it's it's almost the flip side of Head and Shoulders in a way, because it's not about marriage, it's not about romance. It's about, I think, the stereotype that women labored against, that they were husband hunting, and maybe when I read this story, I sort of sense Fitzgerald making fun of men's fear of being trapped in marriage. Did that come through at all for you?
Oh, definitely. He's quite obviously afraid of being trapped.
Right.
And it's interesting that the story starts by identifying Myra as a type. Fitzgerald is already identifying the stock characters, and in some ways, by introducing that, he makes her less of a stock character, because she's quite interesting. And the subterfuge, it's Kelly, right? The subterfuge that Kelly goes to try and disentangle himself from this so-called husband hunter is elaborate and really ludicrous.
Yeah.
She is a... but it was frustrating, too, to answer your question about men, you know, picking up on the idea of their entanglement. At the time, if she wasn't hunting a husband, you know, she was a debutante, and then she sort of aged out of being a debutante at the ripe old age of 21.
Right.
But then what is it exactly that she's supposed to do, if not find a husband?
And I think
her options were limited.
I think that's that's a huge theme for Fitzgerald when he's talking about these belles or debutantes or flappers, whatever we want to call them, is that he's celebrating a subculture for young women that allowed them a visibility in society, that allowed them certain freedoms of behavior. It was, you know, this was the world you could enter, where you could smoke and dance and be out in public and be fashionable. And yet it was limited, because the goal of it was to get you married and to get you back inside the house and to get you out of view. And so,
well, even in the conversations between Myra and a friend, you can only party for so long.
Right.
She had been at this for 5 years, and that no matter how much fun whatever it is you're doing is, it becomes repetitive.
Yeah.
And at this point, she had had all of the quippy conversations and the flirtations and the dancing. I mean, even that becomes boring.
Later in his career, Fitzgerald would write a story that's kind of a variation on this, called Emotional Bankruptcy. And the idea is that this young woman at the ripe old age of 17 or 18 has been through so many romantic attractions that she's exhausted her capacity to feel the freshness and the newness of love. And there's a sort of foreshadowing, I think, of that much deeper theme in what is really a lark of a story in a lot of ways. But there's a passage that I think really gets to the gist of it that you just mentioned. This is the conversation with Lila and Myra. "I can't seem to get interested, Lila," said Myra, bending forward earnestly. "I've played around so much that even while I'm kissing the man, I just wonder how soon I'll get tired of him. I never get carried away like I used to." No, what are you laughing about?
Even while I'm kissing the man, I wonder how soon I'll get tired of him.
"How old are you, Myra?" 21 last spring.
Ancient.
"Well, ancient. Well," said Lila complacently, "take it from me, don't get married unless you're absolutely through playing around. It means giving up an awful lot, you know." "Through. I'm sick and tired of my whole pointless existence. Funny, Lila, but I do feel ancient." Again, 21. "Up at New Haven last spring, men danced with me that seemed like little boys. And once I overheard a girl say in the dressing room, 'There's Myra Harper. She's been coming up here for 8 years. Of course, she was 3 years off. But that did give me the calendar blues."
I like that phrase, the
Yeah,
calendar blues.
calendar blues.
I think I'm getting the calendar blues occasionally.
Almost all of, I've given up on the calendar, but almost all of Fitzgerald's heroines suffer with this knowledge as women that their time to be young and beautiful is ticking away.
And some of them say
up.
that specifically, that they know they will not always be beautiful, and then what?
Right. What happens to me then? Who will love me then? You know, the song that's out now that Lana Del Rey is doing for the Gatsby soundtrack's actually called Young and Beautiful. Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful?
Which, to go back to your initial point about romance and genre and having that be a belittling title, well, who doesn't want to hold on to youth? I mean, there are moments, of course, where a certain amount of maturity is a good thing, but our entire culture is geared toward youth and youthfulness and retaining it, and particularly, I think, I mean, beauty is one aspect of it, but as Myra talks about, the excitement, the newness. You know, you think sometimes about what movie would you like to see for the first time again? What would you like to experience for the first time again? And that rush and that thrill. And so here they go from sort of romance to romance and exciting moment to exciting moment. And so that is a universal theme of just wanting to feel, wanting to have that rush, whatever it turns out to be about.
And I think for his generation, they weren't sure it could be carried into middle or later ages, because these were the children of Victorian parents who were very staid and very, frankly, by our standards, very dull. So
well, and he doesn't really mention this, which I find a little odd, that there's so little mention of World War I.
Right.
But they are children whose adults have gone through something horrific, and who probably do seem somewhat lifeless, maybe husks of their younger selves, because they've seen things that were horrific and that did suck the life out of them in some cases, quite literally.
And there's definitely a sense, a post-war sense throughout these stories of carpe diem, seize the day, you know, this is our moment, let's live it to the fullest. And at the end of the day, who doesn't want that for your entire life? We know that's sort of unrealistic.
That sounds exhausting. We're showing our age again. The calendar blues.